Good afternoon, everyone, and hello from Germany. Welcome to our webinar. My name is Margot Molkenboer, and I work at the Institute for Applied Prevention Research of the German Prevention Congress. So welcome to today's webinar. The title today is Cutting Crime Impact, Police Analysis and Communication Tool to Support Effective Information in Enhanced Patrolling. And it will be very much about the importance of shared information, about how information sharing can work well, and what all this has to do with patrolling in police. Some of you may know that this webinar is part of a larger webinar series with the EU-funded project Cutting Crime Impact. And you will learn more about this project later on. In these webinars, we really appreciate your active participation. So I really want to invite you to take part and to ask questions, to make comments. And if you have questions or comments, please write them in the chat box. There's a question mark in a speech bubble, and there you can enter your questions and your comments. And I really want to invite you to send them straight away so we can discuss them with the speakers at the end of the webinar. And now I would like to introduce the faces I've thought that you can already seen, and now we can see the first one. There's the second one and the third one. Fine. So welcome to all of you. And before I directly hand over to Oscar, I really would like to introduce you and the speakers first. Welcome first to Dr. Chiara Riffel. She's a psychologist and human factors specialist in an assessment center for high reliable organizations at the Zurich University of Applied Sciences. Welcome, Chiara Riffel.
Thank you.
And then welcome to Maurice Illy, who's a sociologist and works on the one hand as a consultant for urban security in Zurich, and on the other hand, he works at the Center of Competence of Urban Security at the State Office for Criminal Investigation in Lower Saxony for the CCI project. And welcome to Dr. Oskar Strein. He's an assistant professor at the University of Groningen and will moderate the webinar today. His research interests include human rights and human dignity in the digital age, privacy, data protection, and much more. So he's, I think, very well placed to speak on a topic that is linked to predictive policing. So welcome, Oscar. And with that, I would like to hand over to you directly. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Margot, for the kind introduction, and also to DPT for setting up today's webinar that, as you said, is part of the Cutting Crime Impact project, and also part to present what we do in the Cutting Crime Impact project. And as you already mentioned, today's session is about predictive policing and what the kind of approaches that we develop throughout the project, in this case specifically together with the Criminal Office of Lower Saxony. So as you can see already, the structure of today's session is that we will hear about the patrol tool. So Maurice Illy will present and discuss the patrol tool, which is one of those tools created throughout the CCI project. And it's specifically tailored to the local policing context, and includes various elements that support comprehensive information processing and more effective internal communication, and therefore enabling an intelligence-enhanced approach to patrolling. So it's also a lot about the added value of data. And before that, we will listen to the presentation by Dr. Riffel, who will start in a minute, and she will discuss the critical importance of information in decision making and how information enables effective action. And during her presentation, we will also learn how poor communication and the lack of information in high reliability organizations result in inadequate actions that in turn lead to critical incidents. Once more, from my side, I can only repeat the invite from Margot to ask questions. We'll discuss after the two presentations. So, Dr. Riffel, the virtual floor is yours. We're looking forward to your presentation.
Okay, thank you for the introduction. So I would like to talk about the importance of shared information in high reliability organizations. By high reliability organizations, I mean organizations that have succeeded in avoiding catastrophes in environment where normal accidents can be expected due to risk factors and the complexity of the operation. So examples for such organizations are air traffic control services or police, rescue services, etc. But let me start with a story about an experienced helicopter pilot in the rescue service. I have changed the example slightly so that no direct conclusion can be drawn about the person involved or the organization itself, because it doesn't matter. So I have not used the original pictures. So this experienced helicopter pilot, he's back from a long holiday with his family, and first day of the vacation, he had to tell his colleagues from work about the travel and everything they experienced during this vacation. Apart from that, everything went quite normally. So as usual, they did the briefing, the weather situation was studied, the equipment was prepared carefully, so they were ready. And all of a sudden, a rescue helicopter was called out to provide medical assistance to an unconscious person close to an alpine hood. So everything was prepared and ready, and the rescue operation could start. And after they take off, the crew received the exact coordinates of the operation site from the operation center, and the crew studied the optical situation around the Alp on a digital map display device in the cockpit, and they concluded that there were no obstacles nearby. So on approach to the Alp, the crew noticed that a person on the southwestern side of the alpine hood wanted to direct the helicopter, and they saw the location of the patient. Due to the space conditions of the intended landing site and the immediate proximity to the terrace, which was fully occupied at that time, the crew decided on final approach not to land on this location. The pilot flew southeast around the alpine hood to look for a suitable landing site. The pilot was able to identify a suitable spot to the northeast of this alpine hood and flew to it, pushing slightly to the right in slow forward flights and descending slightly. But all of a sudden, this resulted in a collision with a cable leading away from this alpine hood. The cable was severed. The rebounding cable hit an uninvolved third person in the area of this alpine hood and injured this person. The pilot was able to land the helicopter, which was damaged by the collision, at the originally planned location on the northeast side of this alpine hood. So what happened? The accident was caused by the helicopter colliding with a cable on its approach to an outlanding site, which was not shown on the aeronautical obstacle map in the area of the collision. And after the collision, the pilot testified that he was not aware of this cable and he couldn't see it on the approach to the landing site. The cable had a maximum height of less than 25 meters above ground and were therefore not entered in the obstacle database because of no reporting obligation. And if you ask the crew after such an accident, you will always find someone who knew about it. In this case, 2 flight assistants or paramedics who were not directly involved in this collision had a discussion about the cable near this alpine hood a week before, after one of them had been hiking in that area. But the pilot who was responsible for this collision was on holiday at that time and did not hear this discussion. So he was not aware because he didn't hear the discussion and because this cable was not in this database. Luckily, everyone survived the accident, even the patient, and the helicopter could be repaired. So I chose this accident as a symbolic example of missing information or a lack of information. The crew was very experienced. It was a normal operation. They were well prepared. The equipment was fine. The chosen action were actually fine, but the pilot was not aware of this cable. So one of the immediate action after this accident was that the Swiss authority, they implemented the reporting form for reporting such cables and lines outside the reporting or the normal reporting obligation. That was the only consequence after this accident. So what could be causes for a lack of information? In that case, there was no reporting obligation. And if you go to the team, I said already, you will always find someone who knew. And if you ask them, why didn't you share this information? You will often hear, I thought this was clear, or I thought this was irrelevant, or no one asked me. I really don't like this answer. And sometimes there is no possibility for sharing information because it's at the end of a shift, a person goes home and hasn't an encounter with other persons. So there is no possibility for sharing information, or there is time pressure. And as we all know, when we are stressed, we don't communicate at the same way as in a normal situation. So we don't share that much information when we are stressed because we are focused on our actions. Or there is no sharing platform to share information or experience that we had during work, or even errors that we made, which would be important for other team members so that they can learn from it. Or there is no encounter. And at that times that we have now in pandemic times, there is no encounter to share information. So everyone is in home office or something, and you don't have time to communicate together. So if there is no sharing platform, you don't have a possibility for sharing information. Or there is a poor or no debriefing and briefing. There could be a fear of speaking up. If you are new in a team and you think everyone else is very experienced, then often it happens that someone is afraid of speaking up and share information or errors or things that they saw during an operation. Or there could be individual bias, for instance, the confirmation bias. That means that you just hear what you want to hear or what meets your expectations. So in emergency teams, it is very important that you have a shared mental model, and sharing information, constructions of the reality is the most important general function of communication. Structured communication in a team fosters the establishment of such a shared mental model and helps to uncover safety risk. A shared mental model refers to a common representation of current situation. And for a successful collaboration, the development of a shared mental model is of central importance. So if you have a shared mental model of a situation in a team, everyone walks in the same direction. And that's an important thing in an emergency situation. In other words, here's the model, the situation awareness model from Mika Ensley. And in other words, you have here the situation awareness with 3 different levels. And on level 1, there is the perception of elements in the current situation. So for having a situation awareness, a mental model of the situation, we gather all the information that we have. And from this, we create a mental model of the situation, and experience help us to assess the situation correctly. In the next step, we can anticipate the future status of the situation. This helps to generate options for our action. We decide which action we take and then we react. So if there is a lack of information on this level 1, we do inadequate situation assessment, and as a consequence, we will choose inappropriate actions. And that can lead to errors, incidents, and accidents. Or in other words, missing information is a kryptonite for experts. So no matter how experienced the person is, if information is missing and therefore an inadequate assessment of the situation has been made, the action will not be effective in this specific situation. An expert may be able to detect earlier if something's going wrong or in the wrong direction, and may be able to mitigate the problem or prevent worse. But that's it. That's the only advantage which experts have in such a situation. So a shared mental model in a team, in an emergency team is important, and a shared mental model means that the team has a common understanding of goals to be achieved, risk factors in the specific situation, the environment, technical aspects, available resources and roles, so the responsibilities in the team, and procedures and regulations. So as an organization, if you want to improve the exchange of information, enable exchange of information by providing a platform. And this is pretty important in those times that we have now. So you have to provide a platform for encountering, for sharing information. Provide information, provide the information that your employees need in such situations, so that they or that there is a smooth operation at the end. Allow time for the exchange, encourage the exchange, and important is a trust culture, so that everyone can share experience, can share errors, can share thoughts or thoughts about risk factors in a situation without being afraid of the consequences. And another thing that an organization could do, and that's my business, that's why I put it here, would be human factors training. And in human factors training, we train effective briefing, debriefing with emergency teams, with medical persons. We train the 10 for 10 principle. It's when you are in an emergency situation, you take breaks for 10 seconds, and then the goal is to have a shared mental model. So in these 10 seconds, you repeat the most important facts in this situation, you clear responsibilities, you clear the goal that the team has in this situation. And if you're well trained, this takes really just 10 seconds. So that's something that we train with emergency teams. One subject is to speak up. So don't be afraid to speak up. And that's, of course, connected to the trust culture of every company. And in training, we discuss about individual bias. In aviation, we have the standardized communication. So we have a factual communication free of emotions, and there are no more than 4 pieces of information in one transmission. So in general, the transmission contains the identification number, the call sign, the flight level, the heading, and the confirmation or the request, so that the important information reaches the other person, that could be an air traffic controller, without the loss of information. The air traffic controllers on the other side, they repeat this transmission and they confirm it. So this type of transmission without emotions and with just 4 pieces of information in one transmission is pretty important in emergency situations. So I would like to conclude, poor communication and a lack of information can lead to inadequate actions and therefore to incidents and accidents in high reliability organizations. And for successful collaboration, the development of a shared mental model is of central importance. In order to create and enhance safety, the organization should focus on enabling a smooth operation by providing their employees with the information they need in the daily operation. Improving the exchange of information can be realized by providing the platform, encourage the exchange, and by human factors training. So as an organization, allow time to reflect, to learn, and to communicate. So yeah, I hope I could show that a lack of information can lead to accidents and incidents, and it's very important that you have a good communication in your organization. Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much for this very interesting presentation. And I see that our second presenter today, Maurice Elie, is already preparing for sharing his screen. It's maybe our guests today at the webinar are asking themselves how this approach to information sharing and also the emphasis on the human elements is reflected in predictive policing, which in most of the public discourse has a very different kind of framing. But Maurice, we're really looking forward to hearing from you what in the context of CCI, the Criminal Office of Lower Saxony, made of this idea.
Thank you.
So
Thank you for the kind introduction. Everything clear? You can see my screen?
Yeah, it all works perfectly.
Okay, very good. It's a pleasure for me to present you Patrol, a tool from the Landeskriminalamt LKA in Lower Saxony. And I think it's a tool that is quite near of the information that we have now heard from Chiara Riffel. Patrol is an analysis and communication tool to support effective information-enhanced police patrolling. This tool has been developed as part of the European Union-funded Cutting Crime Impact Project, CCI. In my 12 years as security manager of the city of Lucerne in Switzerland, I learned that facts and data are not only important for computer scientists or natural scientists. Exact knowledge about the problems of a city and the correct communication are enormously important for, an example, social street workers, street cleaners, government, and especially the police. With Patrol, I would like to introduce you a tool that starts exactly there. Now to the contents of my presentation. First, I'd like to present you the project Cutting Crime Impact. Second, some facts to the Landeskriminalamt Niedersachsen. Then an insight into the project PREMAP, and then the main subject Patrol, police analysis and communication tool to support effective information-enhanced patrolling. The project Cutting Crime Impact, short CCI. This project has received funding from the European Union's Horizon 2020 Research and Innovation Programme. It started in October 2018 and ends at the end of this year. CCI will enable a preventative, evidence-based and sustainable approach to tackling high-impact petty crime. The consortium of CCI consists of the University of Salford in Manchester. They are the project coordinators, and many law enforcement agencies, institutions and research partners from Germany, Estonia, France, Great Britain, the Netherlands, Portugal and Spain. The CCI partners are designing, developing and demonstrating toolkits in 4 different areas. There is predictive policing, there is community policing, crime prevention through urban design and planning, CPUDP, and measuring and mitigating citizens' feelings of insecurity. The LKA of Lower Saxony developed 2 toolkits within the CCI project. There is Insight in the area of measuring and mitigating citizens' feelings of insecurity, and Patrol in the area of predictive policing, the tool I will present you today. The CCI projects are based on the human-centered design thinking approach. This method is oriented toward to whom the developments are intended to help, in example, the users, and why this is so. CCI wants to develop tools for users and stakeholders, as you see later. Patrol is for data analysts and the police officers of the operations and patrol service. The CCI partners develop their tools in collaboration with the end users right at the beginning of the process. In this way, the experience of the end users can be used and their needs taken into account. Now to the Criminological Research Center of the State Office of Criminal Investigation in Lower Saxony. In German, Kriminologische Forschungsstelle des Landeskriminalamts Niedersachsen. It exists since 2006. The most important task is to conduct practice-oriented criminological research from the police for the police. Also, it's all about the users, who needs these researchers. The criminological research of the LKA does the linking of theory and practice and the transfer of knowledge gained to direct police practice on all criminological issues. In example, crime development and forecasting, extremism, radicalization, urban security, dark field research, and many, many more. We work inter and transdisciplinary. We take up needs from the police and develop practical instruments. We are service center for the society, the politics, and the police. We also consult local police departments as well as municipalities, communities, and other stakeholders. The LKA developed a tool for predictive policing in 2017, already before the project CCI started. Based on a decree from the Lower Saxony Ministry of the Interior, PreMap, or Predictive Mobile Analytics for Police, was developed in 2017 and rolled out in 4 police inspectorates in Lower Saxony. With PreMap, an attempt was made to predict residential burglaries as precisely as possible, spatially, and in a timely manner by means of an algorithm. These predicted areas have been patrolled more frequently then. Through its participation in the CCI project, the criminological research of the LKA had the opportunity in 2018 to evaluate PreMap for its practicality. On the one hand, a companion evaluation of PreMap was conducted. On the other hand, systematic observations and interviews were conducted during the first phase of the CCI project. In particular, they wanted to be able to understand the individual perspectives of the people involved in the process. The focus was on the needs and requirements of the officers working in the operations and patrol service. The evaluation showed that PreMap was underused. But why? The use was not adapted to the needs of the police officers. What happened? At the end, there was too little information in the PreMap databases to predict burglaries, so they couldn't reach their goal. From the beginning, it was central that an adaptation of PreMap or a new development must be accepted by the end users. During the evaluation, it became apparent that information of PreMap in operations and patrol service was not always communicated in a user-oriented manner. Also, there was no possibility to share everyday experience from the service or to get the information needed for the service if a briefing was cancelled or missed. We heard before what can happen if a briefing is not in the right way or it doesn't is cancelled or missed. Chiara Riffel said it. There could be accidents and incidents. A testing service was involved from the very beginning, and they helped to define the structure of the new tool. First, what information the emergency and patrol service needs. Second, how this information must be prepared, and how the process organization must be designed in order to achieve as identical and qualitatively high level of information as possible. These findings and considerations led to the development of a new structure for situation analysis and processing, shift change briefing, and information transfer, the patrol tool. Patrol is a new process that has been specifically designed to meet the needs of police officers and enable an intelligence-enhanced approach to patrolling. Patrol enables efficient communication of necessary information to the operation and patrol service at the time it is needed. In collaboration with analysis forces and shift managers, Patrol was specifically developed for police officers. Patrol can be implemented by any police department as a standardized process for situation analysis and information dissemination. What are the contents of Patrol? There is the Patrol Analysis Guide, supports the analysis unit in preparing the daily situation reports. This is to highlight potential crime hotspots and developments. The guide helps the analysts to compile events in different areas, for example, updated events in the area of operation from previous shifts, violent and property crimes, missing persons and pending manhunts, special events in the area of operation, in example, street or drug crime, serial burglaries, or major events like demonstrations or football matches, all kind of events which there are a lot of police officers needed. Information of new instruments, trends and guidelines within the police force, or legal or political change affecting operations and patrols. But how get all these information now to the police officers in the operations and patrol? I have to say it's very important that the analysts do their job the same. I know if we are individuals, but if an individual does the same job, he does it different than the other one. So if you have two analysts and they do a different job, the police officers, they get two different analysis tools and informations, and perhaps they react in another way on the patrolling, and that can be already a kind of dangerous. So how get the informations to the police officers? Patrol provides a standardized process for daily face-to-face briefings. This ensures that all current events and developments in the area of responsibility of shift managers are effectively communicated to the patrol at the start of their shift. You need time, as we heard before, you need time to do the briefings. If there is no time, the informations don't come so directly to the police officers and then are any lacks. If the briefing could not take place face-to-face, because of special daily situations, as we heard before, patrol gives another option. The daily situation can also be communicated via NIMES. This means Niedersachsen Messenger, and they can be communicated to the smartphones of the police officers. NIMES is an internal protected information platform for the police of Lower Saxony. So it's a kind of WhatsApp, but it is really a secure WhatsApp for the police. For patrol, a separate channel can be created in NIMES for the patrol officers, analysts, and shift managers. Via NIMES, all police officers can get and exchange information very quick and direct. This ensures that the operation and patrol service are always up to date. I would like to summarize. Patrol is not only one tool. Patrol is a toolbox. Everybody can take the tool out of the box that he can use best. Figuratively speaking, the analyst takes a wrench, the shift manager prepares the briefings with a screwdriver, and the police officers take the NIMES hammer to hit the communication nail on the head. All information about patrol is also shown in a YouTube film. You can see the link on the slides, and we put the link also into the chat that you can watch the film on YouTube after the presentations. In summary, I would like to show once again the advantages of patrol. Patrol enables improved information transfer through intelligence-enhanced briefing, an optimization of the information and knowledge base that supports officers on daily patrol service. At the end, a more effective police patrolling. Patrol has already been tested in practice. The feedback on design, application, and content were all most positive. Actually, we make known the tool within the Lower Saxony Police. Thank you very much.
Yes, thank you for your presentation. Well in time. Usually the presenters run a little bit over, but it's also a welcome surprise. And I can only encourage all participants to ask questions via the question function that is there. In the meanwhile, I will use my privilege as a moderator to kick off a discussion between us, and then maybe our colleagues and colleagues will also get inspired to ask a couple of questions of their own. So I would like to start with a question to Chiara. I was very interesting to see this developing this shared mind space, and as you call it, if I have that correctly, the shared mental model, in which it is important to communicate and also having the confidence to speak up. But obviously, when we talk about predictive policing, then our minds will probably think about data, and especially digital data, and how to use that. So I was curious to hear from you which kind of role, from your perspective, digital data could play in developing this shared mental model, whether there is something like datafying it. And also you talked about platforms. So often when we hear about platforms these days, we think about physical, about digital platforms and not physical platforms. So I'm really curious to hear about the role of data.
Yeah, it's exactly the same. So if you have teamwork and if you have to work together in a way, then it's always important that you have the same, as I said, mental model or the same perception of the goals of the team and the action that you take. It's about regulations in your company, so that everyone walks in the same direction and focus on the same actions and the same goal at the end. So it doesn't matter if it's work which is in a cockpit or somewhere else or in the office, or if it's a digital work that you undertake in your team. So it's about shared information in a team and about the same image in your head about the goals that you follow, the rules that you have to follow, and the actions that you can take to meet the goal. So even if you work in a digital or on a digital platform, it is more important to encounter and to share your image about the goals that you want to reach. Then it's difficult if you don't see each other. So even then, it's important to have encounters, meetings, meet each other, have chats, so that you focus on the same direction.
Yeah, that's very interesting. And another aspect that I was wondering about, because your example was set in a Swiss setting, and then CCI is of course a European Union funded research project. So I was wondering whether from your research or your experience you can also say something about the role of culture, and whether you see that in different societies there are significant differences in developing this shared mental model, or whether that there are a couple of ingredients which are the same everywhere, regardless of nationality or ethnicity or whatsoever.
Yeah, there are culture differences, of course, but I would say, well, I worked in the aviation business, and there are culture differences, okay, but they shouldn't be. And in aviation, we have like the same standards for every airline and every company. So we worked with Germany, with the US, etc. And you see more culture differences in the way people interact with each other. So I would say in Europe, there is another interaction or another hierarchy between, let's say, pilots or co-pilot and the pilot in command. So that could be a difference, but at the end, the shared information, it's always a digital platform to share the most important information that an operator needs in everyday action, and there's no difference between the countries. But the difference, of course, there are in the communication in a cockpit. But yeah.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah. Great. So with that, I would like to turn to Maurice. And first of all, I think it would be good if you could let us know how you, because you started your presentation with telling us about PreMap and that there was already something in place, right? And now the idea is that this toolkit or toolbox, as you described it, Patrol, would sort of enhance what is already existing within the organization. But the question that I have now is, how can you explain to us a little bit how you're working on creating the culture shift? So how do you communicate that there is this change in the toolkit, and how do you learn about the new possibilities?
Yes, at first, I think it is really important that the people or that doesn't have to be a police officers. If you come with a new tool into a team, that they want to change something, and that they realize that if we change something, or if it makes something new, that they can profit, that they can get better through this. And if this is not clear, then they will go on distance. They don't want to use these new tools, and I think this is very difficult now. We are with 2 or 3 police stations in Lower Saxony in contact, and they are interested to try Patrol, to work with Patrol. And I think the most interesting thing in Patrol is it is really nothing new. It is everything has to be done already now. You have to do you have analysts, you have shift briefings, you have patrol service. Everything is already there, but you can like a machine that needs oil, and you put the wheels better together. And if the people realize that this is going to get better together, so these small machines in these teams, they go better. And I think this is now the job we have to do. I think it isn't a good way if we come top down and say everyone in Lower Saxony has now to need to use Patrol. That is the wrong way. We have to go to police stations, and they have to implement this tool. And if they like it, then perhaps they bring it to other stations, and so we can go further and further.
Yeah, I think this is also clear from both of your presentations, that this is this very strong focus on how is an organization, how are humans actually using the information, that this is a very valid and important point. But connected to that, I have a question from the audience to you, Maurice, on how can Patrol also prevent, good word in the context of our webinar today, right? Prevent that there is an information overload for the agents, right? So I think both of you also mentioned in your presentations that there needs to be specific space for briefing and for information exchange, etc. But is there also, on the other hand, an element where you say, okay, there is so much information that we need to think about mechanisms to filter it, or that we have also a way to decide which information is very important and which information is maybe less important in another kind of setting?
I think it's important that the analysts do their job with analysis guide, exactly, that the main informations go into the reportings or into the briefings, and that the shift managers and the analysts, they work really close together, and they can even discuss which information we have to give to the police officers in the patrol service. And if for me, I have to say, I'm not a police officer, but if I have an email and I use it like WhatsApp, then it's wrong. If I put everything there's on the road and I see it, I put it into an email, I think then it's an information overload. So it's perhaps the thing Chiara said before, it's about the culture. perhaps they need an information culture, which information is really important to get better as a team, and not any. Everyone knows the weather, but yeah, don't have to put the weather into the information report. Perhaps if there is a storm, then it's important, but it's just nice weather and everything is okay. Don't put it in the information guide. So there is an overload. So I think it needs a culture. The main people as analysis guide and the shift manager, they have to decide, and it has to be discussed, and the other one only with the information culture. I call it now information culture. I doesn't know. Chiara, does an information culture exist? You're a specialist.
Yes, and it needs time.
It needs time, okay.
to build up
Okay.
information culture.
Yeah, but sorry, Maurice, one last question, which I'm personally super interested in also, is so when 10 years or so ago, when this whole idea of predictive policing really became very big as data models, we are using big data to predict everything that's going to happen in the future, or this famous Steven Spielberg movie, which I think is now 2 decades old, with where it's about pre-crime, and where Tom Cruise is the famous actor, where he then works in a unit where they are seeing the crime before it happens, the Minority Report, and then they are there before it. So what happens to this whole idea when you look at Patrol? Because you talk a lot about information exchange, and obviously there has also been a lot about, especially from academic side, pushback on this idea, prediction, and the kind of data sets that is being used. So the question in one sentence is prediction completely unimportant now, database model prediction, or has it still a role?
No, it is not unimportant, but if you are so focused on the future and you forget what's happening now, and you don't give information to each other what happened 2 hours before, I think it becomes difficult. And then we are at the human-centered design thinking. If you produce a tool to predict the future, predictive policing, and it doesn't work, or it is too complicated for the police officers, they had 2 or 3 hours more on the computer every day just to get more information about prediction. I think that we saw at PreMap, it wasn't used, and if you don't have the data, you can't predict the future. So we want to predict the future with data. Another thing doesn't work. Okay, yeah, we are not magics, but so I think we have to interact and informate now and get better, and so we get information. I have one short story, really, one short story. Now, in Lucerne, where I worked, we had a problem with littering in the streets, and party peoples also in the parks. And then we worked together with the street cleaners. The street cleaners were the very first one who could see where is going on new parties, because at 5 o'clock in the morning they had to clean the parks and the streets. And then we asked them if they couldn't take a picture and tell us where did you see which mess. And so we had like a little prediction where we have the next reclamation because of noise. Because 1 week after cleaning, after not cleaning, there was the party again, and then we had reclamation of noise. It's like a prediction. It's not rocket science at all. It is cleaning the streets, but they were the first. They had the data, and we could get their data. And I think it could be quite easy, but you have to get the right data at the same time, and so you can perhaps get some predictions.
I think that also relates perfectly to one of the comments from the audience, which talks about understanding the system from a bottom-up perspective. So you illustrated it already greatly with your story. So I still wanted to ask Chiara, because you talked and you mentioned communication culture and that it takes time to establish it, and that but it's still important to take this time. And of course, now the question is that everything like social interaction has to work a bit differently because of COVID restrictions. How you see COVID and the pandemic and all the measures, the physical distancing affecting this kind of building of a communication culture, and whether there are still other avenues or good avenues that work despite COVID and the physical distancing.
Yeah, really different times, because normally we would say there are two platforms. So you have the encounter, you have get-togethers. I'm a huge promoter of after-work drinks, not because of the alcohol, or not just because, no, not because of the alcohol, but it's pretty good after work together, sitting somewhere and chatting about what happened today, about personal errors that we make, so that everyone else can learn from it. And normally, yeah, I would promote that. So it's not the digital platform and the encounter in person. They're for me two things, and they're you share other informations. But yeah, during pandemic times, at the moment we just have this digital platform. So at the moment it's not easy to disconnect these two sharing platforms, and you just use, or often you just use the digital way, and there you have very standardized information. And
yeah,
I hope that therefore you have the most important information that you need for your daily operation. So you have the standardized and the most important information. In aviation, again, it's weather conditions or obstacles in a certain situation, stuff. You need this information for everyday operation. But there's kind of a lack if you don't have the encounter in person. So you miss all the experience from your colleagues, you miss the errors that they did and stuff. And
yeah, so there's also like this, yeah, this lack of unstructured time that you can use to get information across, which is actually very important. But and this also relates to one of the audiences from the comments from the audience about the relationship between technology and personal exchange, and how you in Chiara would see the relationship. All right. Thank you very much from my side. It's almost 5 o'clock, and I see that Margot has joined us again. So Margot, do you want to take us to the end?
Yes, thank you. I'm really happy that we had so much time left for discussions or discussion and questions. That was really interesting. So as always, for me, it's just love to say thank you. Thanks a lot to the speakers for your presentations, Maurice Illy and Chiara Hüppel. And thanks to Oscar for the moderation. And thanks for joining us. I hope that we can welcome you again in one of our next webinars. And the next one will take place on the 22nd of September at 4 to 5 p.m. again, and there our CCI partners from the Netherlands will present their tool called ProHIC, and that they've also developed within the CCI project. You will receive a follow-up email afterwards. There you will find a different or various links, a link to the recording, a link to the patrol video we've already shared in the chat, and also the presentations of the speakers if they agree to that, and the next dates. And for those of you who've attended the first time today in our CCI webinar and who are interested in the previous ones, I would like to invite you to visit the CCI website, the DPT website, or our YouTube channels, where we've put in all the recordings of the previous webinars in this series. So have a nice evening. Thank you and goodbye.